In the developed world, you have banks and you can move money from point to point for a few dollars. And you have Wall Street and you can buy assets like the S&P 500 index. If you had $100,000, if you don't put it in the S&P index, you lost purchasing power every year, 7% of it for a decade. So the store of value in the Western world is I shift my assets into ETFs and index funds and stocks, and I wire money around on Apple Pay or whatever it might be, write a check, it's cheap. In the developed world, 2/3 of Mexicans don't have a bank. In El Salvador, they don't have banks. Billions and billions of people don't have banks. And we say they're unbanked. In India, they don't have a bank. But most people don't really think about what that means. Here's what it means. You're a type 1 diabetic, and you don't have insulin. And that means you can eat infinite food, you can't form fat, and you will starve to death. That's what that means. If you can't store economic energy over a long period of time, it means that you can work yourself to death. All your life savings gets drained to zero. And in the month when you lose your job, your family starves to death. So unbanked. In El Salvador, it means there's 2 million people in the US that send $10 billion back to El Salvador every year. 1 billion of it gets stolen by the money transfer agents. Okay, they take a 10% commission. Crazy. Okay, you're taking 10% commissions from a wage laborer sending money to their mother, 10%. The Visa and MasterCard network, by the way, take 2.5%. They're monopolies. Okay, but 2.5% is painful, 10% is brutal. Then you have to get the money through a Western Union office, which means travel for 2 or 3 hours, and maybe you get mugged on the way. And when you get the money in a currency. In certain third world countries, you get the money in the local currency, which is losing 30 to 40% of its value a year. So I send you $1,000, you get 900, then you spend another 100 to get it. So you get down to 800. And then every month that goes by, you lose 50. So it's pretty devastating. That what's the problem? You can't move the monetary energy. And the second problem is you can't store it. I mean, in the US, the typical US or Western individual is losing 1 to 2% of their energy a month if they store it in the currency. The way they get around it is they buy S&P index, and the S&P is up 32% year over year, and they pretend they're rich, right? It's like, good. How does someone in El Salvador buy S&P index stocks? They don't have Robinhood. They don't have a bank, yep. Right? So you're living hand to mouth. So the significance of Bitcoin for them is you can take a $50 Android phone, download a software wallet. I can send you $87 instantly for free on the Lightning Network. If you store it in Bitcoin, it's going to go up in value. And otherwise you can spend it, and you're not at the mercy of I'd like to say banks, but the banks don't care. You're not at the mercy of the money changers. And the best case is El Salvador, where they use the US dollar, so they're only losing 1 to 2% of their purchasing power a month. The worst case is Zimbabwe, which means that somebody runs the country, you have to buy the local currency, and that person that runs the country gives billions of dollars of that currency to their buddy, and you better spend the currency because it'll only be worth half as much in 4 weeks or 8 weeks. And in the real worst case, they tell you it's illegal to hold any other asset. I can't hold land, I can't hold gold, I can't buy stocks. And so, you know what, it's literally like taking your insulin away and making all of you diabetics and saying it's illegal to store fat on your body. Good luck with that. In the one day when you can't find food, you will surely die.
So I wanted to double click on this because it's so important. I mean, the realization, and this was the conversation we had down in your home in Miami just a month or two ago, is how absolutely critical this type of a engineered economic system is to allow people to have prosperity, right? I mean, one of the things we talk about is exponential technologies are taking everything that used to be scarce into abundance, whether it's food, energy, water, healthcare, and so forth. But I love this system of the requirement to be able to store energy and money is economic energy. What happened in El Salvador? Can you take a moment to explain the implications and how important this is?
Well, I think they had a civil war and they lost their currency. Okay, countries that are poorly managed lose their currency privileges. And what we can see is that at 100 countries in the world are all losing their currencies. Everybody's basically, the Venezuelans not going to have a currency. The Zimbabwe don't have a currency. Any currency that collapses more than 20 to 30% against the US dollar eventually fails. So people throw that over and they go to the dollar. The euro is effectively pegged to the dollar. Most of the other currencies are pegged to the dollar. So you've really got two currency systems. You've got CNY, and even the Chinese peg their currency to the dollar, right? If you look at it. So you've got the first world currency system, then you've got the developed world currencies. They're all failing. So in El Salvador, they didn't have a currency. They used the US dollar, and then they're at the mercy of two things. One, the money changers are basically stealing 10 to 20% of their money when they move it back and forth. If I charge you 10% commission every time you move your money to a family member, I mean, how many times do you get to do that, right? So that's a problem. And the second problem is now I'm storing my money in the US dollar. It used to lose 0.5% a month, and now it's losing 2% purchasing power a month because the Fed's printing money. So how do you crawl out of that abyss? And I think the president of El Salvador realized that what you want to do is back your currency or back your country with an asset which is appreciating in value. So Bitcoin's been appreciating 120% a year every year for a decade. The S&P is up 12% a year for a decade. So Bitcoin outperforms the S&P by a factor of 10. It outperforms gold, which is up by maybe 1 to 2% a decade. So it's outperforming gold by a factor of 50. Look, here's the big idea, that Bitcoin's not just an asset, right? It's the perfected apex property of the human race. If you have $1 billion and you want to give it to your grandchildren, are you going to buy land in California, a building in New York, $1 billion stack of gold? Are you going to buy $1 billion of Apple stock? Are you going to buy $1 billion worth of art, diamonds, commodities, corn futures, oil? What are you going to buy for $1 billion that'll be here 100 years from now? And if you think about it really hard, you conclude that every other asset class is more easily impaired, seized, confiscated, taxed, or regulated. And of course, some are impractical. There's no way that 5 billion people in Africa and Asia are going to be walking around with Apple stock on their mobile phones. That's not happening. How do you pay for for anything with Apple stock on a Saturday afternoon in South Africa, right? That doesn't work. And so, yeah, you could try to use a currency, but now I've been in business 20 years. I can't do business in Nigeria after 20 years, because if you want to do business in the fiat currency, you have to have your bank deal with your central bank, deal with their central bank, deal with their bank. Can't do it on the weekend, and you can't do it because of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in Russia or Nigeria or whoever. And so how do you get 8 billion people trading with each other through 100 million corporations? You need a protocol. What is the protocol? Bitcoin. Bitcoin is Michael, an open monetary protocol to link 8 billion people and 100 million companies with one another in the 21st century.
I'm going to get back to El Salvador. Give me a Bitcoin 101, if you don't mind. We probably have some people here who have heard of it and are interested in learning about it. And we've got a wide range. And I want to get back to what did the president of El Salvador just do. But let's take a second and give us the Bitcoin 101, if you would.
Okay. Let's say that I wanted to create a non-sovereign store of value. I have $1 million. I want to save it for 100 years, and I don't want to trust anybody else with the money. I can't put it in a bank. Every single person in Argentina had 90% of their US dollars and their Argentine pesos seized overnight by the government 20 years ago by edict, stroke of a pen. It wasn't hard. So I can't leave it in a bank. I can't store it in a currency because the banks can steal it from me. I can't save it in a stock. The company might not even exist, and the CEO or the board might dilute it. I can't put it in land because I can't move the land, and they could tax in Florida, they tax you 2% a year on the land. You lose your land in 20 years. So I buy gold. Now that's the traditional idea. But the problem with gold is that every year gold miners produce 2% more gold. And then I can't carry $1 billion of gold through an airport. So I have to put it in a bank. And then 95 of the top 100 cities in the world, 95 or more of them seized all your gold in the past 100 years when the regime changes. Okay, so how do I fix that? So this guy Satoshi invented digital gold on an open protocol monetary network, and we call that Bitcoin. And the way it works is I define 21 million gold coins. I dematerialize them in cyberspace. I make them infinitely divisible by 100 million units each, and that's called a Satoshi. Then I make it impossible to ever make any more than 21 million. And then I give you a protocol where any computer can send the coin or the Bitcoin to any other computer without a middleman. And I make it possible for you to take personal custody of your asset. So if I want $1 billion worth of property, I can carry it around in my head by memorizing the passphrase. I can hold it on a hardware wallet. I can hold it on a mobile phone. I can put it to any computer in the world. Then I can move the $1 billion to any custodian in the world in a few minutes for a pittance. So the idea is, if I took gold and I said, you can't mine any more gold, check, that would make gold more valuable. And if I said, you can't use it for jewelry, there's no jewelry being melted down into gold, that makes gold more valuable. And if I capped it at 21 million and I numbered each of the gold coins, that'd make it more valuable. And if I made it infinitely divisible, and if you could authenticate it in a split second with a mobile phone, that would make it more valuable. And if I made it programmable with a protocol, and I made it possible for a computer to make 1 million transactions a second and talk to 100 million other computers using Intel semiconductors, that would make it more valuable. So in essence, we created programmable gold on a network. And then what's the last twist? The last twist is you make it decentralized so that there's 10,000 different computers, or maybe even 100,000 different computers running the software at the same time with an identical copy of the ledger, so that no company, no CEO, no government, no regulator can meddle with it, the protocol. So it is literally, it's like a virus released into cyberspace, a living life form. You can't stop it without turning off every computer on Earth at the same time, and you have to keep them turned off forever.
The point is that Bitcoin is about nobody in particular. It's a decentralized network. There is no center to the network. And a lot of people were fearful and saying, oh my gosh, don't upset Elon. You know, he might sell. He bought some Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is about faith, and it's about getting rid of fiat money. And it's not about fear. And people need to disabuse themselves of having this fear of somebody like an Elon that they are now kowtowing to because they think he is somehow instrumental in Bitcoin. He's not. Michael Saylor is not. The Winklevi twins are not. Max Keiser is not. It's a completely decentralized network that is flawless, monetary network that's growing on its own volition. Doesn't matter what any individual does. And now you've got countries like El Salvador and now Paraguay just announced that they're also adopting Bitcoin as a legal tender. So there's another 8 countries in the region that are going to go Bitcoin, hyper-Bitcoinization. This is the beginning of a global Bitcoin standard. This is this event on July 8th in Austin is a bit of a victory lap because, as you know, for 10 years since Bitcoin was $1, we've been saying to buy Bitcoin that it's going to compete, if not replace gold, that'll become legal tender. It'll become the Bitcoin global standard. So it's a way to have some fun, kind of like as a victory lap, because we won. We won this race. All the fiat money's on the back foot. Gold is not doing anything. The altcoins, as they're called, whether it's BCH or BSV or Ether or Cardano or XRP, they're all now have been pretty much shown the exit because they claim to do things that Bitcoin can't do. But now Bitcoin has proven that it can do everything any of these things can do, but it can do it a lot better. So there's no use case for those altcoins whatsoever. I don't think many of them will be around in 2 or 3 years' time at all. But
But let's talk about the elephant in the room, Max. Things have been dapping. I mean, the Bitcoin price has come down drastically. We have, Wall Street people, and I don't want to even say their names because I know you don't care for them, but are saying, I'm done with Bitcoin. I've sold my Bitcoin. So a lot of people who had entered the party and were joining in on the celebrations are now exiting. And a lot of investors I speak to are saying, oh gosh, I'm so scared of what's happening in Bitcoin. I had so much belief in it. And now I don't know if I want to take part in something where when a billionaire tweets, it corrects so drastically. So what do you say to the—
So to put this into context, as I've been saying, we've been doing this for 10 years. We've had 15 of these corrections over the past 12 years. And this current one is an average one, nothing special. Number two, it always shakes out the weak hands. So like a Jim Cramer that you mentioned has lettuce hands or weak hands. He never did the research. He never talked about the technology. He was in and out. He's a trader. He's a hedge fund guy. He's not a serious money manager by any respect. Meanwhile, Paul Tudor Jones came out and said, I'm upping my allocation from 1% to 5%. Mm-hmm. Paul Tudor Jones is a very successful, multi-decade successful career hedge fund money manager titan. Jim Cramer is an entertainer on CNBC who, if you look at all his buys and sells over 15 years, you'd come out exactly dead even. He's never made anyone a nickel. So that's a big difference there. Number two, the hodling a security is always difficult. I remember when I was buying Apple stock in the late 90s when it had crashed and Steve Jobs just came back into the company. People were dead set against Apple. They hated Apple. Turned out to be a good investment. When was a good time to sell Amazon stock? Never. Even though it's went through some 60, 70% corrections throughout its ascent now to being one of the most valuable companies in the world, right? So volatility in Bitcoin is something we want because it's a trade-off we accept. Because holding fiat money means you have stability, but you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. Holding Bitcoin is volatile, but you're guaranteed to increase purchasing power. Guaranteed. A word you rarely see in the investment world. And I was a fiduciary and a money manager and a stockbroker on Wall Street for many, many years. Very rare, never do use a word guaranteed, but I can, in this sense, tell you, you have a guaranteed rise in purchasing power with Bitcoin, and you do accept some volatility for that. But at a 200% annualized rate of return for 10 years, I'm willing to accept a little volatility. Anybody who's shaken out now, that happens all the time. I mean, those are markets. People, they pop in, they pop out. They don't do their research. They don't know why they own it to begin with. They end up dumping it, then they buy it back. Look at China. China's actually getting out of the Bitcoin business right at probably the best time to get into the Bitcoin business, but that's okay because El Salvador, Paraguay, Guatemala, Mexico, they're going to get into the Bitcoin business. Texas is going to get into the Bitcoin business. Texas is going to inherit all that mining from China. All those rigs went to Kazakhstan and Texas. And that's the way this distributed monetary network works. It only goes to people who are A, smart, two, have values, have ethics. China does not have the ethical basis to even own Bitcoin. They have an ethics problem first. That's their primary problem. Texas, on the other hand, is rich, historically, morally sound, and they love sound money, and they're going to get all the mining. And that's why we're doing this in Austin, Texas. Also, on July 8th, is that Texas is the new China. Texas is the new heartland of the Bitcoin mining world. Giddy up, Texas. Yahoo!
So on the note about China, Saylor came out saying as well, tragedy for China, win for the rest of the world. When you see the news about the crackdown on the China mining, is this just, what are you thinking? Are there concerns there, Max, or do you feel this is just a narrative that's being repeated? And I also want to know, do you think it has anything to do with China launching a digital currency?
Right. It's great that China is getting out of the Bitcoin mining business because it means that the mining gets more distributed, more decentralized. Only Bitcoin is decentralized. Nothing else is. Fiat money is not, gold is not, and the altcoin, certainly no altcoin is decentralized. Only Bitcoin is truly decentralized. And so people used to say, China's overly mining, too much mining in Bitcoin, it's too centralized. Okay, well, now that's no longer true anymore. It's being dispersed, it's being decentralized. Exactly as the game theory baked into the Bitcoin protocol would tell you would happen, has happened. As I said would happen 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I said that decentralization is always going to hew toward more decentralization. So China's out of the picture. Their own central bank digital currency is just more centralized garbage. It doesn't compete with Bitcoin. It's just another version of their own fiat money that they're just doing digitally. The stock doesn't compete with Bitcoin. They will be plowing back into Bitcoin at $500,000 to $600,000 a coin. China made a strategic error right now, geopolitically. But it's great for El Salvador. It's great for Guatemala. It's great for Paraguay. It's great for Mexico, because they're going to inherit this monetary network at a great price. So remember, there's been compounding at 200% a year for 10 years. I still have a $220,000 target for Bitcoin in 2021.
Well,
that's still my target in 2021.
I'm happy you brought it up, because this is the room where it happened, Max.
Right.
Where we had that video that went viral where you gave your forecast for the year, and I have my forecast tucked away in my childhood desk right next to me. I want to know, you have this big bold forecast of 220,000.
Yeah.
You were hoping for November. Have you since adjusted?
No, I saw the same thing in 2013, and again in another period where you had a 5, 6, 7x move in a compressed amount of time. So I still have that target. The fundamentals that apply to Bitcoin are only getting stronger, and people are, I think, not pricing in this news about sovereign states making Bitcoin legal tender. I mean, this is the first. Bitcoin separates state from money. In the case of El Salvador, it'll be running parallel with the dollar, but the individuals have the right to take control of their own private keys. It's outside of the state's control. Same thing everywhere. And the government makes a good point. They're saying, why should we be in the business of the central bank business? We can outsource that to Bitcoin, and we can use geothermal, which is free and ecologically sound. And we can do other stuff with our time as a government. Government shouldn't be wasting their time trying to monkey around with monetary policy. It's a complete waste of government's time. Just outsource your monetary policy to Bitcoin and work on something else. Build roads, take out trash, do something that governments are good at. Don't focus on monetary policy. Governments are horrible at monetary policy. At this point, there's no difference between the United States and the Soviet Union in terms of monetary policy right now. You have a Politburo of decision makers making horrible decisions based on price signals that are concocted out of horrible feedback, out of horrible price signals, and they're both going to go the exact same way, into the trash bin of history, because they have no monetary policy, because they're run by kleptocrats and geriatric senile old idiots, and they're just going to die on the vine. And these countries run by young, enterprising entrepreneurs like El Salvador and others are going to be like, we'll take it. We'll run the world. Thank you very much. And Bitcoin is our standard.
And you had forecasted that a few years back, that we would see this wave. But what's interesting about the countries that are adopting, you're saying they're led by younger entrepreneurial people. I mean, who do you think we could see next in terms of those countries? I mean, they all seem to be centralized in the same area. Is that not?
It's no mistake. After the Monroe Doctrine and the U.S. turning the southern states, the Latin America and Central America, into a slave labor market and cheap commodities using the dollar. Read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Washington, D.C., the CIA would send guys down there and load them up with debt. And if you don't pay the debt, we'll throw you out of an airplane. That's been America's foreign policy in the region for decades. Now these countries are saying, hey, you know what? I think we'll opt out. Thank you very much, but we don't need you, because now we have Bitcoin, as I predicted and a few others predicted. The whole question was never, when will governments ban Bitcoin? The whole question is, which governments will start to adopt Bitcoin, and you get into this hash war. You get into competitive government acquisition mode. Like, we need as much Bitcoin as possible. You see, the New York, they're having a mayoral race right now. The guy who's leading the race said, oh, to heck with Miami, because Miami has declared itself the Bitcoin capital of America under its mayor, is saying, we're going to be the Bitcoin capital of America. New York City is going to be the Bitcoin capital of America, according to the mayoral candidate. He just came out with that this week, right? So that's what I've been saying is going to happen. There's going to be competition to get the most Bitcoin, mine Bitcoin, and get the most Bitcoin businesses. That's what we're going to see happening. It's called game theory. It's baked into the protocol since day one, and now it's playing out on the sovereign level, as we predicted for many years. So there's not going to be any banning of Bitcoin. There's going to be those countries that are smart enough to get in now and reap the benefits, and then those countries that'll wait and be,
Yeah,
suffering.
it will be really interesting to see who will be added next to the list.
Well, so clearly in the region, as I said, Paraguay just came out today and said we're joining.
Right.
My understanding is that Guatemala is ready to go. So it's when you
But I
get
mean, like a European country, if someone like a country in Europe were to come out and say it, that would be huge.
right. What they can't afford not to. That's the way game theory works. If these countries start to develop sound currency and sound currency policies, and El Salvador's GDP is going to triple, property prices are up, people are moving there, and this has all happened very quickly. So if you have a country and your GDP is suffering and your fiat money is deteriorating, you're going to be tempted into the Bitcoin standard to take advantage of that. Which country in Europe? I thought that Iran would be a candidate to
Mhm.
go Bitcoin. They already
Mhm.
have like 4.5% of the hash rate right now, from what I understand. Obviously, Russia, they totally got out of dollars. They dumped their last dollars out of their reserves. They have no more dollars. So they are free to do something smart, like do what Paraguay, what El Salvador just did, go to a Bitcoin standard. India is also possibly, they go vacillating back and forth. So India, Russia are two prime candidates. And in Europe, because of the dominance of the ECB, and when I talked to you in January, I said the ECB was the most corrupt central bank in the world. Christine Lagarde is an absolute disaster. And I predicted that would be the first major central bank to go under. And I still think that that's true. The European Central Bank is going to go under, and then these countries are going to be fending for themselves. And then you'll have them when they get split off. Some of them will break off and say, "Hey, we're going to go to a Bitcoin standard." But right now, they're still under the influence of the European Central Bank, which is an atrocious, absolutely ungodly institution that's causing untold harm and damage all over the EU under Christine Lagarde. And so that's the problem that they have right now.
Wow, you might actually like Jerome Powell more than Lagarde.
Probably. I think Jerome Powell is he's simply inherited the same set of policies that were set in motion by Alan Greenspan, Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen. It's the J. Powell put. They just print whenever the markets go down. It's set and repeat. But in America, though, unlike in Europe, you have the states. So the states have a lot of power. This is not true in Europe. So Texas can change the laws in Texas. Florida can change the laws in Florida to be pro-Bitcoin. New York can change the laws in New York. We saw this in the marijuana business where states declared their own laws that pertain to marijuana, like in Colorado, and that's putting pressure at the federal level. So in America, you get states and a federal separation of powers. But in Europe, it's one homogenous kind of top-down bureaucratic nightmare. And so you don't have that.
Good stuff, Max. I think just hearing you talk before about the price will bring a lot of sense of calm to people panicking about the price. But it's a good reminder that this is what Bitcoin does. It's just a question of how long. I've had experts coming on saying this is going to be, winter has come for Bitcoin, and this could take months, maybe years to
No,
shake
it's
off.
not going to take years. Look, I mean, Warren Buffett famously says over and over again, that he loves down markets. He's done his research. He knows what the values are, and he loves it when markets are down. He loves it when markets crash because he can buy what he wants on sale.
So
It's very
to that,
strange in the investment business. Peter Lynch talks about this in his books, and as many that typically people who buy stocks they don't seem to understand that if the price is cheaper, you're getting good value for something. But they understand it if they went to their local grocery store or their hardware store and they saw hammers on sale, 50% off. They'd be like, wow, I got the same hammer for 50% off. I'm buying it. Well, here you got Bitcoin, which is on sale right now. It's the greatest monetary network in the world. The adoption of Bitcoin right now at 150 million users or so is about where the internet was in 1997. Now, I was on doing .com in the 90s, and 1997 is right when Netscape went public, and you had the whole explosion of the internet as we know it today. it hinged really on that key year, 1997. So I think in 2021 is similar to 1997 for Bitcoin. So Bitcoin will be, this is the year where it suddenly goes that hockey stick move, and you go from 150 million users to 2 or 3 billion users in a pretty compressed amount of time. In El Salvador, the number one finance app is Lightning Strike from Zap, from Jack Mahler's company, and it's the number one app in the entire country. He's signing on 20,000 users a day in El Salvador to be on Lightning Network, which is Bitcoin essentially. That means that within a year, the entire country will be on Bitcoin within a year. And then that's spreading to Guatemala, and it's spreading to Paraguay. It's spreading all over the region to 100 million people, into Mexico, right? So so why would you not want to own that? If you had a chance to buy the internet in 1997, when only 150 million people were using it, and somebody said, "Hey, for $35,000, an option here, a share, you can own a piece of what will become the dominant communications network of the globe." Would you pass up on that deal? No. Same thing with Bitcoin. Why would you not own it at this price? Because the $500,000, $600,000 price is baked into the cake at this point. There's virtually no bear case. No matter what Frank Juster says, there is no bear case. I listened to the debate. None of those points made up, but he's not the only one. None of the bears, none of those points that have held up. They're just recycling the same old FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt over and over and over again. They can't even come up with anything new.
Well, a lot of the gold bugs this week were coming out saying, hey, Bitcoiners, we told you so. You want to park your wealth in this? Look at the kind of correction you'd have to stomach.
Well, again, it's a trade-off. Do you want guaranteed increase in purchasing power with a little volatility? Or do you want to be in paper money where it's guaranteed loss of purchasing power? And I use the word guaranteed. Or with gold, which is just going sideways. Gold is a captive market. You don't get good price signals in gold. It's not going anywhere.
But their point is, they're saying you're preserving your wealth. What happened this week, you would be destroying your wealth, is the counter argument.
This week, but again, on any short-term time period, and by the way, gold has had plenty of sell-offs as well, and silver, but on any one particular time period, you're going to you can't extrapolate that and come up with any conclusion that makes any sense. Once you look out over a year, 2 year time frame, which I think is reasonable, you see this bull market. Plus, Bitcoin is essentially 3 pieces to the Bitcoin triangle. It's price, hash rate, and difficulty adjustment. Those 3 pieces make up the protocol. And each one of those 3 pieces interact with each other in a way that produces this incredible monetary network that's outside any bank or state. And if you look at the hash rate, you look at the difficulty adjustment, and you see the way those have responded to the migration of mining out of China into Texas, you see how the network completely protects itself, how the network is inviolable, how the network is functioning, and how the network generates coins on that schedule of approximately every 10 minutes, no matter what happens. That's the key. Do I want my monetary policy to be indestructible? Those coins coming every 10 minutes, no matter what? An incredible amount of hash rate or computational power moved out of China into Kazakhstan and Texas, and without missing a beat. There was no block. The blocks kept coming. TikTok, next block. That's the key metric to look at. Price is not the key metric. Price is more a reflection of how messed up fiat money is. It has not really a reflection on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is blocked. Are they coming every 10 minutes? Yes. Is the hash rate increasing over time? Yes, it is. Is the difficulty adjustment operating as designed? Absolutely. And then once you understand that, you're like, okay, I'm going to take my guaranteed increase in purchasing power and a little volatility in fiat terms. I'll accept that. And the gold people, I think it's misplaced for them to somehow feel like this is a repudiation of what they've been saying, because at the end of the day, what we see in gold over the past 100 years, 150 years, is that it's maintained its remarkable performance of returning about 1% over inflation. That's it. And that's all we're ever going to get. And it's fine if you want to do that. But as Michael Saylor said in your interview, if you wanted to use gold as a diversity to protect some of your portfolio, what do you do with the rest of your portfolio, right? Justra was saying, oh, I put 10% of my portfolio in gold as a hedge. What about the other 90%? What are you going to, all that stuff is all garbage, right? This is a sea change. This is again, like the internet, it's a quantum leap. It's for 20 years, the cypherpunks have been trying to create digital gold. They finally succeeded in 2009. And now the world is completely changing. And when a country started adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, which is something that even a year ago, 99% of the people you told that to would scoff and say, never, never, okay? Now it's happening. And price recovery is going to be just as quick as we saw this pullback. We're going to hit new all-time highs very quickly. And it's still 220,000 target in 2021 because the total addressable market, Daniela, for this entity, for this new asset class is $400 trillion. And it's still under $1 trillion. That's a 400x upside. So do you want a piece of that? Or do you want to sit back and grow olive oil, like Frank Justra, and, come in every once in a while and wax poetic about the history of gold and how it's preserving its purchasing power, meanwhile missing the most exciting development in finance in 500 years.